Stop whining. Your kids are soft. You lack discipline, but I've got news for you. You're mine now. You belong to me. You're not gonna have your mommies run behind you anymore and wipe your little douches. Oh no, it's time now to turn this mush into muscles. No more complaining, no more Mr. Kim will have to go to the bathroom. Nothing. There is no bathroom.
Hey yo, thanks for tuning in to The Source, your source for celebrity news. As you know, our new Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, called every 1 through 4 star U.S. general from around the world to Quantico, Virginia for an emergency meeting just so the taxpayers could pay over $6 million in travel expenses for what could have been a 30-minute Zoom meeting. Now, during the meeting, Pete Hegseth, who some have referred to as the most unqualified man in the room, told every general in attendance that under his watch, things are about to change in the military. For example, while he's in charge, we're not going to have any fat, out-of-shape beardos rocking the uniform. No gay people or transgender folks are going to fight for this country, and women are going to have to reach male standards of physical fitness in order to serve in certain combat positions. Pete Hegseth also said that the U.S. military is no longer going to be known as the woke department because we're not giving people positions based on DEI. And then he turned around and told all of those generals that if they didn't like this new ideology, they could pack their duffel bags and hit the road.
But if the words I'm speaking today are making your heart sink, then you should do the honorable thing and resign. For too long, we've promoted too many uniformed leaders for the wrong reasons, based on their race, based on gender quotas, based on historic so-called firsts. We became the woke department. No more identity months, DEI offices, dudes in dresses. No more climate change worship. No more division, distraction, or gender delusions. We are done with that. Each service will ensure that every requirement for every combat MOS, for every designated combat arms position, returns to the highest male standard only. This is not about preventing women from serving. If women can make it, excellent. If not, it is what it is. If that means no women qualify for some combat jobs, so be it. Frankly, it's tiring to look out at combat formations, or really any formation, and see fat troops. Likewise, it's completely unacceptable to see fat generals and admirals in the halls of the Pentagon and leading commands around the country and the world. It's a bad look. We're going to cut our hair, shave our beards, and adhere to standards. No more beardos.
All right, so after Pete Hegseth took the stage, looking like the frat boy version of Steve Jobs, trying to sell the generals the latest iPhone, his boss took the stage and gave one of the most discombobulated, incoherent, rambling speeches in U.S. history, which included him joking, or perhaps not joking, about using U.S. cities as training grounds for the military.
As the Wall Street Journal says, told our military leaders that he may want to use the military against Americans, saying the enemy within, talking about using the United States military to train.
Anyhow, now that we're all caught up, we're all up to speed, and we're all on the same page, let me tell you the 4 reasons why this propaganda stunt was a big, hot, stinking mess. Alright, 1. You never call all your highest ranking members of the military to one location and then advertise it on TV like it's the latest episode of Game of Thrones, because it gives your enemies and your ops an advance notice of when and where they can potentially attack. Now, we're lucky that this time it didn't happen, but think about it. If you gather all your nation's top military generals in one place and then announce the meeting to the world, you're creating a major national security risk, because that location instantly becomes a high-value target for enemies, terrorists, and anyone looking to destabilize the country. One successful strike could wipe out much of the leadership at once, leaving the chain of command broken and creating chaos in a moment of crisis. And that's why military leaders and presidents work hard to spread their leaders out and protect their movements. And publicizing such a meeting doesn't just endanger lives, it also tips off adversaries to when and where the most critical decision makers will be, which could invite sabotage, cyber attacks, or worse. And think about it, the psychological impact. If word got out that nearly all senior commanders were lost in a single blow, it could cause panic at home and embolden enemies abroad. In short, keeping leadership dispersed and their movements discreet isn't just cautious, it's essential to the stability and security of the nation. 2, the US government just spent over $6 million in taxpayer money to bring all of those generals to Quantico for nothing more than an overglorified Zoom meeting / briefing that could have been done for free because all of the information that was conveyed could have been shared with a PowerPoint in a 3-page memo. I mean, for real, they could have did that whole thing in Google Classroom. But no, once again, it's all about the pomp and circumstance. And while we have domestic issues at home, like broken roads and bridges, failing schools, and vets who can't get proper medical care, we don't have money for that. But we have money to rally all of the troops from around the world to call them to one place to tell them to cut their beards and to lose some weight. And that brings me to number 3. Why in the world would Pete Hegseth in the Department of War think that it was a wise idea to call a meeting with all of the generals from around the world and televise it globally, where he tells them that a portion of our military is overweight and not meeting standards? Can somebody please tell Pistol Pete that there are some things that you say in-house and don't share with your ops? I mean, for real, that's like the biggest thug on a block saying, I got the biggest pistol on a block, but I ain't got no bullets. Listen, what Pete Hegseth needs to understand is that when you represent our US military and the ops are watching, you represent our military like this. You get out there and you present the strength of our military. You don't get out there and make it seem as if some of our elite soldiers are couch potatoes like this.
What you're looking at here is what's known as the battle chair. Some people call it John Wick 2.0. Just for fun, has a flamethrower on the back. Big tank, big flame. I built 2 anti-aircraft guns, one of the most popular anti-aircraft guns used by the United States in World War II. It has anti-aircraft radar. It's all controlled by a joystick, like playing a video game. Real easy to drive, kids love it.
Listen, do me a favor and like and subscribe to the channel as we explore number 4. The person, who will remain nameless, who said that he spoke to Pete Hegseth about potentially using U.S. cities as training grounds for the U.S. military is extremely dangerous. And while it might seem like rhetoric, we have to be cautious and we got to be very careful. Because unbeknownst to many, the U.S. military has used cities as training grounds before, and guess what? It didn't fare well for black people. And I know, you're out there like, what are you talking about, Sauce? What I'm talking about is this. During the Cold War, the U.S. military ran open-air dispersion tests in and around St. Louis, and Pruitt-Igoe, a large public housing complex, ended up being the epicenter for the tests. In other words, it was ground zero. Between the 1950s and the 1960s, the Army and other government researchers released microscopic tracer particles like zinc cadmium sulfide in the projects, and in some related tests, radioactive tracers were used in other places to study how aerosolized biological and chemical agents might spread through a city and how far it could travel if warfare actually took place in the U.S. or other urban cities around the world. Now, according to sources, the government used the Army Chemical Corps to carry out open-air studies in North St. Louis because, according to officials, North St. Louis's terrain, building structures, and waterways are supposedly very similar to those in Moscow, Russia. During the testing, ground vehicles and other aircraft dispersed toxic radioactive chemicals over the Pruitt-Igoe project, and men in radioactive hazmat suits also sprayed chemicals off the roofs of the buildings and in the playground. And when the people were like, yo, why are we living in this fog? The government was basically like, listen, we trying to kill off the rats and the insects. Nothing to worry about. Ultimately, the government used data, set up an array of sampling stations and detectors to map wind patterns, particle concentration, and likely exposure zones to map out military strategies that they could use in case of wars in the U.S. and other urban areas. Effectively, the Pruitt-Igoe projects and nearby neighborhoods in St. Louis were treated as a live urban test bed for experiments as radioactive agents were sprayed on black people in the neighborhood. In other words, the government was like, we're living in an era when nuclear war could jump off at any minute, and the military really needs to know what would happen if a nuke hit our cities. So, let's actually spray up one of our own cities with some radioactive-ish and see what happens. But let's not spray up the rich white people, let's spray up a predominantly black housing project because, as we all know, black people are expendable and they're the best guinea pigs. Remember how well they did during the Tuskegee experiment? And I know, somebody out there right now is like, oh my goodness, Source, you were so full of ish. The US government would never do that to its own people. Okay, if you think so, but before you render your final conclusion and you say that they would never do it, watch this.
The Wendell O. Pruitt homes and William Igoe apartments, known together as Pruitt-Igoe, were a joint urban housing project designed by Minoru Yamasaki, who also designed the World Trade Center towers. This 33 buildings, 11-story high-rise was erected in 1954. It originally was intended to house young middle-class Caucasian families, but poor design and decision by the federal district judge or the St. Louis to stop the practice of segregation in public housing by 1956. This led to an exodus of the Caucasian families and the arrival of low-income melanated families, shortly after the city stopped funding maintenance and let the buildings deteriorate. In the late 50s, the U.S. government sprayed zinc cadmium sulfide from the top of the buildings down onto tenants. Tests showed this causes chronic lung and respiratory problems. The government came clean about this in 1994. But by this time, the tenants were either too old or deceased.
Now to a News Nation exclusive investigation into a secret government experiment that was carried out in St. Louis. Residents tell us they still remember a mysterious fog. Children would run through it. Mothers would try and close their windows against it. For decades, they all had questions, and now we're seeking answers. The United States Army now admits that it sprayed a chemical that contained cadmium, a known carcinogen, on a neighborhood of more than 10,000 people. Critics say this was done with no warning and no consent. Well, tonight we return to the site of that demolished neighborhood and speak with former residents who believe the government turned them into human test subjects. Although the Army admits that the test happened, it is not admitted to harming the residents. News Nation's Natasha Zubez investigates what was in the fog and why the truth may still be buried.
The fog drifted through the streets like a ghost.
That's exactly what it looked like, a thick fog.
It was summertime, it was hot. We would just run through it as fast as we could and try to just cool ourselves off. It stuck to you.
The spray was so foul as far as the odor. It made some of us have headaches, nausea, dizziness.
That's what I remember. It made me sick.
It wasn't the weather. It was an eerie smoke descending from rooftops, rolling from the backs of trucks.
Regular flatbed truck, but it had a big machine on the back. And it had a big nozzle that really sprayed a fog you couldn't even see through. It was that thick, and it really, we felt it as it would adhere to our skin. And as far as the guys on top of the buildings, they tried to portray them to us as maintenance workers. But we was like, what is a maintenance worker doing? And basically a hazmat suit, and they had masks and goggles.
In the 1950s and 60s, in secret, the U.S. Army sprayed zinc cadmium sulfide into the air of a St. Louis housing project, a largely black neighborhood called Pruitt-Igoe.
It was a lose-lose situation for us in Pruitt-Igoe. We were subjects. We were subjects.
They didn't ask for our permission. We didn't ask for them to spray us. My government used me like I was a guinea pig.
The government now admits to a secretive series of Cold War tests, including one dubbed Large Area Coverage. More than 30 tests conducted across the U.S. and Canada. spraying zinc cadmium sulfide from planes, rooftops, and vehicles to simulate how a biological attack might spread, all to prepare for potential warfare against the Soviets.
Many of us been in the military and had top secret clearances. We know how it works.
We have died for America. We have fought for America.
You are a veteran.
I am United States Air Force veteran.
Dr. Starks, you're a veteran as well, isn't
Yes, I am. I'm an Air Force veteran also.
Is there a sense of betrayal here?
Definitely.
They want to know if those secret tests have anything to do with what they're observing with their own eyes.
I lost my 2 older siblings to cancer. I lost a brother last month.
I've been diagnosed recently with a rare form of lymphoma.
I had cancer of the left kidney, had partial removal of my left kidney.
What a shame. But it just goes to show you that you have to be very leery when the U.S. government talks about using U.S. cities as training grounds for the military. So, there you have it. Those are just 4 of the many reasons why I think that the meeting with the U.S. generals was a bust. Now, it should come as no surprise that some of the people in our leadership right now actually idolize some of the strong men who rule with an iron fist in history. But you can't allow your idolatry to put the men and women who serve in our military at risk. And that's what this meeting did. Because this convening of the top military brass was nothing more than an overhyped Zoom meeting that basically shared information that should have been kept in-house with the ops. And since when do we share our internal military affairs on TV for everyone to see? I mean, that's crazy. I mean, everybody from George Washington to Abraham Lincoln to John F. Kennedy to Ronald Reagan to Jay-Z know darn well that you don't do that. Listen, let me know what you think about the meeting with all the generals. Was it worth $6 million plus in taxpayer money? And also, did it convey the military might that the War Department really wanted it to convey? And last but not least, what do you think about Pete Hegseth's new rules and that person who's still going to remain nameless saying that he talked to Pete about potentially using U.S. cities as military training grounds? Let me know what you think about all of that in the comments, and while you're down there leaving a comment, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel and share this video with your friends. Hey yo, thanks for tuning in to The Source, your source for celebrity news. Peace.